And joining me today from Ottawa, as he does every year on this day, is Dean Oliver. He is Director of Research at the Canadian Museum of History. Dean, start by reminding us who we are remembering today. Canada is, of course, a country of immigrants, and those who lost their lives while serving come from all backgrounds and all walks of life, right?
They do indeed, and many of those have served even at times when perhaps the state of Canada might not necessarily have deserved it. But the history of their service is long and distinguished. One of the first Victoria Cross recipients in Canada was in the 1850s, a black man named William Hall, who was the child of those who had escaped slavery in the United States. Another of our Victoria Cross winners, Philip Canaval, was a Ukrainian Canadian who served and earned his VC at Hill 70 in 1917, at the same time as Ukrainian Canadians were being locked up for potential disloyalty in Canada. There were Chinese Canadian special service agents in the Burma-India Theatre. The War Museum has a small display on a man named Matsuo Mitsui, who was a Japanese Canadian who served with distinction in the First World War, only to find his property and the record of his service dishonored, his property confiscated in the internment operations of World War II. So even now, I think, Donna, somewhere in the range of 10% of Canadians are members of visible minorities, and not much lower a percentage of those, 7, 8, 9% are members of recent immigrant communities. So the numbers have been and are very, very high.
And that's some very good information to have, Dean. And also, we wear poppies as to honor and to pay tribute to those veterans. We do it because we want to, not because it's mandatory. And I think it's safe to say we can't assume because someone forgets to wear a poppy or isn't wearing one or takes it off, that does not mean that they aren't honoring veterans.
Well, it's an interesting conundrum, isn't it? We all feel as though there's some kind of secular obligation to wearing a poppy. I feel it, my family feels it, and I hope I've instilled in my children the desire to feel it. But in the end, military service in a democracy is to make the world safe, to make choices that perhaps you or I wouldn't always like. When I walk here to the studio in the morning, I pass through a sea of poppies in a largely multicultural city, and so I don't feel as though, and I think the numbers support me in this, that the propensity to wear poppies, adherence to the memory of those who served, or participation in remembrance ceremonies is anywhere in decline. In fact, if memory serves, there was an Ipsos poll this week that said the numbers are up about 15%, even from as recently as 2016. You and I in past years have talked about whether or not, in the aftermath of our major contribution to Afghanistan, attention to remembrance would decline. I think now, some years afterwards, the answer's in. No, it hasn't.
I think you're absolutely right. Thank you for all of that historical information, important information to share. Dean Oliver, we're going to come back to you. Let's go